The colossal chakra claw rips through the night wind, just a millimeter away from piercing Minato and Kushina's chests. The sharp cry of the newborn echoes through the destroyed forest, marking the tragic end you already know by heart. But the blood that should stain the grass simply doesn't fall, freezing in midair from a spiritual pressure so overwhelming that even the colossal Nine-Tails fox is paralyzed by pure dread. For you to understand the absurd weight of this moment, we need to shift our focus to the dark future of Konoha, where the Seventh Hokage had to spend every single drop of his vitality in a silent time war. He used the remnants of the karma energy to tear the veil between eras, completely destroying his own physical reserves and burning his internal organs, because his unshakable will of fire demanded this absolute sacrifice. Navigating the thick current of time isn't like taking a walk in the park. It's actually a cruel ordeal that shreds a shinobi's very essence and soul every single second. Invisible threads of temporal energy tried to rip Naruto's consciousness away as he forced his way through, erasing his deepest memories and demanding superhuman endurance. He had to anchor his mind to the distant cry of his infant self, enduring the excruciating and near-lethal pain of existing in two realities at once. And when Konoha's night sky finally shattered into a storm of golden light, the sight that welcomed our hero was one of pure despair, ashes, and heavy dust. He landed in the exact millisecond the masked man was manipulating the corrupted beast, feeling the dark chakra invade his own lungs, already so battered by the journey and sheer exhaustion. His physical pain was immeasurable, but the emotional weight of seeing his parents right there, exhausted and ready for imminent death, served as the true, inexhaustible fuel for what he was about to do. Minato was thrown against the dirt, breathing heavily while thick blood dripped down his bandages, shielding his beloved wife with trembling, powerless arms. He raised his incredibly blue eyes and saw that familiar silhouette, wearing a white cloak consumed by reddish flames, radiating a presence he could only describe as truly divine. The great Fourth Hokage tried to scream with all his might, wanting to warn the stranger of the deadly danger, but his voice failed completely before the undeniable majesty of that highly unlikely savior. The terrifying fox roared with all the accumulated fury of centuries of hatred, bringing down its giant paw with a brutal force that would be enough to wipe out entire mountains in the blink of an eye. The air was instantly sucked out of the entire battlefield, creating a deafening and lethal vacuum, while the massive attack threatened to permanently erase the existence of the yellow flash and the red-hot habanero. You would definitely be holding your breath watching this terrifying scene, but the Seventh Hokage didn't even need to take a single step back to face the blind fury of that colossal beast. He crossed his arms in a calm and extremely lethal motion, igniting from the inside out an unexplored golden flame, something never before documented in the entire history of the ninja world. It wasn't just the raw power of the fox or the blessed gift of the six paths, it was the majestic sage mode of King Ashura, a supreme, divine, and lethal evolution, born entirely out of pain and time. The devastating impact of the corrupted claw against the shield of pure golden light echoed like a muffled thunderclap, deflecting the unstoppable force of the Nine-Tails as if it were a mere leaf blowing in the wind. Kushina widened her tired eyes, feeling her painful sobbing stop for a brief moment as she stared in absolute awe at the broad, imposing back of that mysterious man. The vibrant warmth radiating from his body wasn't hostile or wild, but rather an extremely warm and very familiar embrace, a maternal touch reflected in the brute strength of the greatest ninja of all time. She squeezed Minato's hand tightly, and both silently realized that this warrior wasn't just there to fight, but primarily to heal the deepest and most painful wound of that timeline. The seventh looked softly over his shoulder, smiling gently with tear-filled eyes beneath the dark, imposing marks of his new sage mode, while the masked man watched in terror from the distant shadows. That scenario created the perfect moment for ultimate glory, marking the beginning of a happy and peaceful life alongside his perfectly restored family, finally saved from tragedy. However, the massive energy released by Ashura's awakening didn't just tear through the fox's attack, it attracted the attention of an ancient parasite hidden in the darkness that would make everyone's survival an impossible feat. The divine flash of the new sage mode still lit up the darkness of the ruined forest, but the temporal rift that brought our hero there began to pulse incredibly aggressively, reacting with extreme violence to the absolute volume of pure energy that defied all natural laws. This deep tear in space-time started to suck in the air with a crushing gravity, creating a terrifying and dark whirlpool that distorted the very fabric of reality around it, threatening to swallow the entire existence of the Hidden Leaf Village before dawn. The masked man controlling the beast realized the danger and cowardly retreated into the thickest shadows, leaving behind a scene of immeasurable chaos where the imposing leader had to sustain the literal weight of two converging universes. It was exactly in this moment of pure vulnerability that a black, sinister ooze silently emerged from the cracked ground, moving with a disturbing cunning through the crevices and taking advantage of the widespread chaos to infiltrate the edges of the golden energy. This living anomaly was the silent incarnation of Kaguya's will, drawn by the lethal oscillation of the timeline, looking for the perfect opportunity to collapse the portal and trap absolutely everyone in an infinite void. The parasitic villain slithered through the blazing flames without making a single sound, greedily feeding on the residual energy of the massive fox's attack to strengthen its own twisted form and rapidly expand its destructive reach. It crawled stealthily toward the vibrant spiral of light that kept the fragile temporal passage open, digging its dark claws straight into the core of the magical portal, injecting a dense corruption that made the entire Konoha sky tremble and crack like a glass mirror. You can surely imagine the absolute despair of looking up and seeing the whole universe literally shattering into thousands of sharp pieces, while an impenetrable darkness tries to invade your home and ruthlessly devour everything you love most. The brave Fourth Hokage pressed his wounded fist against the damp, blood-stained earth, forcing his trembling legs to stand with sheer bravery even when every small fiber of his exhausted body screamed in pain, because the primal instinct to protect his beloved family spoke so much louder. He summoned his legendary three-pronged lethal weapon with the tiny bit of strength he had left in his arm, intensely preparing to launch a desperate frontal assault against the crawling creature, but was abruptly stopped by a thick, hot wall of chakra that pinned him firmly in place. The time traveler knew the risk perfectly, aware that any slight physical contact his father made with that anomaly would result in a painful, instant disintegration, proudly taking upon himself the crushing and solitary responsibility of facing that ancient dread. Our fearless hero closed his marked eyes for a brief, silent fraction of a second, concentrating absolutely all of his unshakable will of fire into a single vital point right in the center of his chest. While the dark marks on his face glowed with an intensity capable of blinding the unwary, he suddenly unleashed a monumental shockwave, made entirely of the peaceful yet furious energy of the great divine king, sweeping the surrounding ground with surgical and incredibly lethal precision, aiming without hesitation straight at the corrupted center where the parasite tried to establish its deep, dark roots. The thunderous collision of these two primordial forces generated a haunting, deafening sound resembling a high-pitched scream of heavy metal tearing through the silence of the dawn, kicking up a curtain of dust and debris so thick and dense that it completely blocked the view of the stars. That crawling, manipulative ooze was immediately forced to fall back several heavy meters under the overwhelming pressure of the powerful divine strike, thrashing furiously on the ground as it tried at all costs to find a new defensive breach in that massive, impenetrable shield protecting the small family unit. Realizing very clearly that it could never face the raw, limitless power of that giant, mysterious golden adversary head-on, the shapeless creature quickly changed its sneaky tactic, violently spreading its disgusting liquid tentacles across the devastated battlefield to attack the temporal portal from several crucial angles. This incredibly dirty and cruel maneuver forced the protective leader to expand his own force field to the maximum limit his muscles could bear, stretching his massive chakra network to the unstable edges of the cosmic rupture, painstakingly creating a colossal dome that protected the entire village. Maintaining and sustaining this absurdly massive structure required a physical sacrifice of surreal and brutal proportions, making the thick veins in our hero's trembling arms bulge dangerously under his severely burned skin, while sweat and blood slowly dripped from the corner of his closed mouth due to extreme internal tearing. He panted with extreme and constant difficulty at every new treacherous strike from the cursed shadows against his immense dome of pure energy, feeling without warning his own life force being brutally drained by the magnetic flaw in space-time, yet keeping his heroic posture absolutely firm. An exhausted Kushina watched that deep, painful, silent agony with a mother's heart completely tight and anguished, crying profusely as she realized that this giant, nameless warrior was literally handing over his own life on a silver platter to ensure she could see the sun rise. The disgusting villain of darkness let out a harsh, dry, and deeply uncomfortable laugh that quickly echoed through the frightened minds of everyone present, noticing with extreme and malicious clarity the visibly accelerated wear on that brilliant, trembling golden shield, openly mocking the useless and pathetic attempt to defy the relentless course of destiny. The sneaky ooze merged deeply with the black, devastated earth to perform its great and final magic trick, silently absorbing the dense negative chakra still radiating from the paralyzed colossal beast, transforming its own physical extension into a gigantic spiked spear of pure darkness, aimed mercilessly straight at the vibrant heart of the portal. If by any chance that profane and cursed spear managed to pierce the delicate temporal rift suspended in the air, the sacred connection to the peaceful future would be violently and instantly severed, causing an energy explosion so brutal it would disintegrate the entire ninja continent. The great golden ruler slowly lifted his wounded and dirty face, sporting a beautiful and confident smile of pure determination, quickly bringing his two large hands together in a seal of extreme ancestral power that required the painful and irreversible total sacrifice of all his majestic cosmic reserves, ignoring the maddening pain in his flesh. In the blink of an eye, he formed countless, immense arms of solid gleaming chakra around his own illuminated body, grabbing with divine fury every cold millimeter of the dark spear plummeting from the high sky at terrifying speed, locking into an insane titanic power struggle that melted the stone around them into pure incandescent magma. The absurd heat radiating from this violent clash of colossal energies instantly dried the fallen tears on the admiring face of Minato, who watched paralyzed and utterly astounded at the greatest and most spectacular act of pure heroic sacrifice ever witnessed. protagonist in the long history of the shinobi. The imposing and crushing divine force of that relentless warrior finally gave way and completely shattered the terrible spear of darkness into thousands of tiny, harmless, glowing fragments, purifying the atmosphere and all the evil filth with its overwhelming pacifying light, stabilizing the gigantic temporal rift into a beautiful, calm, serene silver ring. The powerful hero collapsed heavily, falling to his knees on the boiling earth, panting heavily from deep exhaustion, while his beautiful marks of wisdom began to flicker faintly and slowly disappear, believing truly for a very brief, naive second that the worst disaster of that bloody dawn was finally over. But, as the comforting blanket of silence threatened to gently return to that completely destroyed and empty forest, a sudden agonizing cry of extreme terror violently tore through the very cold morning air, cruelly drawing everyone's attention back to the ash-covered ground. Despair consumed the exhausted heart of the young couple as they ran frantically toward the small makeshift wooden basket, feeling their chests pounding so hard it felt like tearing their throats from so much built-up anguish, noticing in total panic that the protective fabric was entirely overtaken by poison. The battered leader forced the shredded muscles of his severely broken body to rise urgently one last time, widening his brilliant, tear-filled blue eyes in an expression of complete, freezing, absolute terror, realizing with extreme clarity and way too late that the massive, terrifying spear attacking the skies served perfectly as a simple, deceptive distraction. The cowardly parasite had secretly dived into the thick, forgotten shadows around the crying, abandoned little child, sinking its filthy claws into the fragile skin and injecting an irreversible, fatal curse that now glowed mercilessly in the newborn's tiny veins. Kushina's torn scream cut through the thick fog of that night like a sharp blade, echoing a maternal despair so deep and visceral it would make your own heart clench in your chest as she threw herself to her knees on the stained earth to reach the makeshift basket where the tiny baby cried endlessly. The cold, sticky darkness of the parasite had already completely dissipated into the dirty air, leaving behind only a putrid mark pulsing on the innocent child's fragile chest, spreading black veins that throbbed in a sickly, terrifyingly fast rhythm. Minato acted with the imprecise speed of a father completely terrified by fear, channeling every last drop of his remaining medical chakra into the palms of his trembling hands, desperately trying to suppress the dark infection before it devoured his only son's tiny lungs. But the glowing seal the great blonde hero tried to impose was violently repelled by the cursed nature of that ancient plague, burning the fourth Hokage's fingers with relentless acidity and showing you that his genius intelligence would never be enough to single-handedly reverse that terrible tragedy. The great time traveler walked slowly, dragging his heavy, tired steps across the devastated earth, feeling his own soul shatter as he looked directly at the epicenter of that absurd cruelty, instantly understanding the dark magnitude of the plan orchestrated in total silence. It wasn't just a common deadly poison running through the veins of that fragile, crying child, but rather a wicked temporal anomaly designed to consume the newborn's existence from the inside out, cruelly ensuring that the child of prophecy would never grow up to become a true, powerful threat. The seventh knelt softly beside that weeping mother and the absolutely exhausted father, offering a look of extreme sweetness that contrasted bizarrely with the chaotic scene of pure destruction around them, asking with a calm gesture for Minato to pull back his wounded, exhausted hands. He placed his firm, calloused right hand right over the crying baby's tiny chest, closing his eyes marked by the invisible wrinkles of countless past battles, preparing his own indomitable spirit to execute the most painful and sacrificial forbidden jutsu in recorded history. An extremely opaque, melancholic light began to flow directly from the innocent child into the imposing body of the great golden leader, creating an invisible bridge of pure agony that sucked away the fatal curse drop by drop, tearing a muffled, excruciating groan from that formidable man's throat. You would feel the distress invading your home if you saw the rotten marks violently crawling up the ruler's arm, sinking their wicked claws straight into our absolute hero's already battered heart, while he voluntarily drank in all the lethality of that absurdly merciless attack. The beautiful, brave, red-hot habanero pressed her dry lips together in an expression of complete shock and unconditional admiration, holding the clean clothes of her tiny baby who was now breathing much more peacefully, watching the healthy, rosy hue miraculously return to his tiny face. She looked deeply at that massive, mysterious savior who was now panting heavily with his hand clutching his broad chest, fully absorbing the agonizing pain that was meant for the child, realizing deep in her divine intuition that this supreme act surpassed any acceptable limit of traditional, ancient ninja duty. Minato widened his incredible blue eyes as he witnessed the fabric of time itself begin to severely distort around the kind, fallen traveler, noticing that the robust legs of that unshakable man were starting to glitch visually and completely lose their physical matter, as if the natural world was trying to expel him. The brilliant, genius blonde strategist pieced the shocking facts together in his sharp mind in a painful fraction of a second, concluding in panic that absorbing the lethal curse was only a small, simple part of the true sacrifice that Giant firmly took on to guarantee the much-desired future peace. Our fearless, absolute protagonist coughed dryly, releasing a concerning amount of dark blood onto the cold, ash-covered ground, lifting an extremely pale face that still held the widest, most comforting smile you've ever known in your entire life. He opened his trembling arms and explained with a hoarse, choked voice that altering the past in such a colossal, beautiful way demanded an impossibly high, non-negotiable cost. A brutal toll charged by destiny that required the continuous stability of the eras, in exchange for the precious, bright lives spared today. The staggering, cruel truth fell on Minato and Kushina's heavy shoulders like an anvil of solid, crushing lead, knocking the breath completely out of their lungs all at once, as they understood the real, terrifying scale of the massive renunciation they were silently witnessing. The Grand Kage peacefully revealed that by curing the infected child and securing a timeline where his parents kept breathing together, he was automatically erasing and deleting his own chronological version of pain and suffering that heroically forged the indomitable, glorious seventh leader in the future. You must be feeling the colossal, crushing magnitude of this sad decision that threatens to break your heart right now. Clearly understanding that the savior gladly accepted condemning his own future existence to the thickest oblivion, trading his difficult memories of triumph for a quiet family life. The exhausted body of the majestic warrior of peace began to slowly melt into thousands of beautiful tiny golden particles that floated harmoniously toward the vast, dark sky, embracing his own definitive elimination with the purest, most contagious joy masterfully drawn in his beautiful, gentle smile. The fantastic divine cosmic rift that sustained him closed abruptly with a sharp, completely definitive snap, forever sealing the beautiful final destiny of that kind hero who smiled openly as the last glowing trace of his face evaporated, leaving his parents safe in the forest. But in the exact crucial millisecond when everything seemed magically resolved and peace would finally reign, a terrifying blade of black, freezing chakra pierced Minato's chest from behind in a totally brutal, silent manner, paralyzing the seventh who now had no physical body left to stop that relentless death. The ruby blood instantly stained the legendary Fourth Hokage's back in a silent explosion of pure cowardice, making Kushina's eyes widen in paralyzing horror as she saw the cowardly masked man re-emerging from the deep shadows with an extended, dark blade. The stealthy attack from behind was meticulously calculated to exploit the exact millisecond of vulnerability where the hope for survival finally bloomed, showing you just how rotten and completely merciless that manipulator was. Refusing to accept the village's long-awaited peace, the seventh leader watched all of this closely as a fragile spirit completely stripped of any tangible physical matter, feeling bitter despair flood his crumbling consciousness as he watched Minato's imposing body slowly give way to the absurd weight of the freezing strike. The genuine, uncontrollable rage of a son watching his beloved father bleed to death ignited the very last particles of his fated essence, awakening a hidden spiritual strength so ancient that it made the destroyed forest air vibrate highly aggressively. Perfectly defying all the absolute laws of life and even inescapable death, our glorious protagonist channeled all of his remaining will of fire into one last thunderous silent roar that echoed only inside the shaken minds of those present. The glowing golden dust that formed the sad remnants of his former material body suddenly stopped rising toward the starry sky, spinning dizzily into a magnificent blinding vortex that dove like a shooting star directly into Minato's wounded bleeding chest. This fantastic, warm spiritual fusion of pure, absolute light violently rejected the cold, dark blade piercing the brave father's back, instantly healing all destroyed tissues and severed nerves with a cozy warmth that perfectly resembled a long, nostalgic hug. You can surely imagine the masked villain's perplexed, terrified expression when he realized his foolproof, lethal weapon simply melted away in his own dirty hands, while a masterful, unbeatable aura wrapped around the Fourth Hokage's healed body like an incredibly impenetrable armor. The time traveler's very deep, highly emotional voice echoed clearly inside his young warrior father's genius mind, transferring not only the miraculous, vital healing, but also the sharp, wise instincts from thousands of violent battles fought in the forgotten future. Driven entirely by this beautiful cosmic synchrony of father and son fighting together against the brutal world's injustice, the blonde genius vanished in a brilliant orange flash that perfectly blended his own speedy style with the Grand Seventh Leader's stupendous golden heritage. The formidable colossal impact of the perfectly coordinated strike hit the masked man's stomach with the crushing force of a very furious hurricane, irrevocably shattering the macabre rask into thousands of sharp shards that flew through the air in a beautiful rain of consummated vengeance. That pathetic monster of the shadows was violently thrown outside the sacred limits of the Hidden Leaf Village, with a long scream of pure agony, permanently banished from that fateful night by a majestic attack that sealed away the danger without leaving the slightest chance for a sudden return. With the massive, suffocating threat finally eliminated for all eternity, and the immense forest sinking into a calm, deeply soothing silence, the beautiful armor of light protecting Minato began to detach from his healed body, floating softly through the very cold morning air. The brilliant sparks once again drew the smiling, perfectly serene shape of that great man in a rustic cloak for just one tiny, precious, vital second. Enough time to deliver one last, silent look loaded with all the sincere gratitude a human being could possibly feel. Kushina held the healthy baby firmly against her racing heart and walked very hastily to join her beloved husband, who was panting quite relieved, watching in pure wonder as that magical ghostly silhouette raised its calloused right hand in a classic, highly humble sign of honorable farewell. The brave red-hot habanero let the last painful warm tears of pure emotion flow freely down her cheeks covered in dirt and heavy ash, realizing with extreme maternal clarity that this imposing, all-powerful anonymous protector was actually her grown-up little boy saving his beautiful shining destiny. Minato gently touched his crying beloved wife's fragile shoulder with infinite tenderness and immediately smiled back at the golden ghost who was already fading away completely, nodding his head in a silent, deeply true approval that fearlessly carried all the colossal father's pride of a man deeply in love with his family. The handsome, heroic time traveler closed his bright, exhaustion-marked eyes with the most absolute peace of mind imaginable inside his own soul, dissolving his spirit entirely into a soft, comforting autumn breeze that swept all the destruction far away and took with it the haunting weight of a terribly dark past. The radiant sun finally peeked from behind the great rocky monument of the valiant Hokages, illuminating the entirely saved village with its majestic, warm rays of vivid hope, beautifully announcing the grand beginning of a perfectly peaceful era where the ninja universe's most beloved family would remain united and very happy for absolutely forever. Our incredibly epic story closes exactly with this beautiful, tight, sincere hug of the relieved couple, firmly holding their crying baby under the glorious, unforgettable light of the rising morning, guaranteeing you with absolute certainty that the incredible famous legend of the Child of Prophecy would now be built with so much abundant love without carrying any solitary tragedy on his back. If this intense roller coaster of truly insane emotions firmly grabbed your precious attention until this phenomenal final second of the journey, ruthlessly smash that like button down below and subscribe right now so you don't miss the next gigantic narratives I'm preparing with dedication. I just dropped another sensational video on the channel that follows this exact same electrifying vibe full of shocking plot twists from start to finish. So click there right now to keep following these absurd, highly successful adventures. I'll see you in the next incredible story, and I leave you here with a big tight hug.